time has come! If anyone is offering $1 million to the first person to give you an accurate flat Earth map, get ready to pay up. Quite often, Australia is one of the first things people notice when examining a flat Earth map.
Yeah, it looks really squished in comparison to this one. So which one is more accurate?
Would it surprise you if I told you that the Gleason map was more accurate?
At this point, no. Okay, so let's figure out the dimensions of Australia. According to this article about people who have walked across Australia, Australia is 4,030 miles across from east to west, and it's 2,290 miles from north to south.
Let's keep things simple here. We'll make 1 inch represent 1,000 miles. So that puts us at about 4 inches across and about 2.3 inches down. Now let's put Australia into those dimensions without changing its proportion. Now we need to draw in our margin of error to see how inaccurate this is in comparison with those dimensions. We're just going to move that margin of error over here for a moment without changing it. Now we're going to duplicate our dimensions so we can do the same thing with another map. Okay, Google Earth. Let's take this and do the same thing to it. Let's try to fit these into the dimensions as best we can. Okay, it's touching the left, it's touching the right, it's touching the top. Now let's draw in that margin of error.
Oh my goodness, that is so much more inaccurate than I was expecting.
I'll go put it over side by side for you. Isn't that crazy?
Wait a second.
Wait, what's going on?
So we accidentally said 4,030 miles across? That was the kilometers, not the miles. It's actually 2,500 miles across. We got our dimensions wrong.
Drat! Okay, let's do this again the right way.
A lot quicker this time.
2.3 north to south. And let's get our east to west in there at 2.5. Here's the Gleason, Australia. Now drawing in our margin of error. Now duplicating our dimensions. And here's our other map of Australia, which appears to fit about perfectly.
Wow, that is suspiciously perfect. Now, looking back on our article with more scrutinous eyes, I think it's pretty odd that their numbers were so exactly proportional. You know, I truly doubt they walked perfectly straight lines all the way across Australia.
Great observation. After spending some time doing land navigation with the Army, I learned people very rarely travel in straight lines over long distances due to all kinds of different obstacles.
Yeah, absolutely. Australia has some pretty intense mountain ranges that these walkers would have had to traverse. And switchbacks can really lengthen out a hiker's journey. If you were to take those into account, Australia's proportions would certainly get warped, particularly among Australia's biggest mountain ranges. I think it is pretty likely the author of the article just lazily drew a line on a pre-existing map and said, this is how far they walked, rather than taking all those switchbacks into account and measuring how far they actually walked.
I really agree with you on that. So we can't trust that article.
Is that really true?
Let's look at this article.
Let's try to read more of the article than Kyle and his wife. People who walk across Australia can walk from either the geographical extremes of the continent or from directly opposed cities on opposite shores. Then a few of those locations are named. The distance between the east and west, as the crow flies, not as one walks, but as the crow flies, is about 4,000 kilometers, or about 3,700 kilometers from north to south. Distance calculated by author using the resources of Geoscience Australia. Oh, so now we know how the author got those distances, not by lazily drawing a line on a map and saying this is how far they walked, but by using Geoscience Australia. If we look at this image here, this is not representing paths that people walked. Nobody's saying a person walked along the Tropic of Capricorn or walked in a straight line from Darwin to Hobart over the water, or from Southeast Cape to Cape York Peninsula, or from Brisbane to Perth, or from Cape Byron to Steep Point. No one is claiming that people walked on these straight lines. Walkers who choose to circumnavigate Australia can follow the National Highway for large sections of their journey. Of the people who have successfully circumnavigated the continent, it took a range of 365 to 897 days to complete. Distances involved are in the vicinity of 14,300 kilometers or 17,000 kilometers, depending on the route taken. So, for those who choose to circumnavigate the country, in other words, for those who go around the perimeter of the country, they travel anywhere from between 14 and 17,000 kilometers. Now, if we were to treat Australia as a rectangle, okay, just as a rectangle, the dimensions would be about 4,000 kilometers wide and 3,700 kilometers tall. Add those together, and you get 7,700 kilometers. If you multiply that by 2, you get the perimeter of a rectangle, which, if my math is correct, 7,700 times 2 is 15,400, which is pretty well in between 14.3 thousand and 17,000. Let's look at Highway 1. Let's look at this route that goes around the country, around the perimeter of the country. Okay, you see that it goes almost around the complete perimeter of the country. How long is this? Approximately 14,500 kilometers. Again, this value coincides with a rectangle of approximately the dimensions that Australia has. But if we look for kilometers being mentioned down here, we have people who walked around mainland Australia and traveled 15,000 kilometers. One person walked from Port Augusta to Burketown and traveled 2,500 kilometers. If you plot those on a map, you can see what the straight line distance is versus what he went. So it goes to show that Kyle and his wife didn't really read this article. They got about this far in, and they probably looked at this image, and they based all of their conclusions about the reliability of this article and this map on just these two pieces of information and ignored all the rest.
I think Bart and Lisa are feeling a little upset right now. Isn't there something you'd like to say?
There sure is. Kids, you tried your best, and you failed miserably. The lesson is, never try.